Good morning, all. Am I audible? Good morning, friends. We are starting our reading clubs with the prayer.
भेद भाव अपने दिल से साफ कर सके, दोस्तों से भूल हो तो माफ कर सके, झूठ से बचे रहे, सच कदम भरे, दूसरों के जैसे पहले खुद को जय करे, हमको मन की शक्ति देना, मुश्किलें पड़े तो हम पर हित न कर्म कर, साथ दे तो धर्म का, चले तो धर्म पर, खुद पे हौसला रहे, बदी से ना डरे, दूसरों की जैसे पहले खुद को जय करे, हमको मन की शक्ति देना।
Good morning, all. We are giving tribute to a great master, Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, for divine science of homeopathy. Let us to know the dare to be wise in this field of homeopathy. Taking blessings of our Guru, Dr. Prafull Vijayakar, sirs, who have bridged this divine science with the homeopathy, modern science, and made homeopathy easy like mathematics. Jai Hanuman, Jai Homeopathy, Om Vijay Karaya Namah. So, friends, we are in the journey of reading the wisdom of organon of medicines by Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, along with the understanding of the modern science and in light of homeopathy in modern science with genetic materia medica by Dr. Prafull Vijayakar. Up till now, in organon of medicines, we have covered the theoretical part of what we called as the understanding of the persons up to 170 aphorism, followed by we have understood the how the disease has been developed and understanding of the miasm from the wisdom of Master Hahnemann with the help of organon of medicines. Then we have understood the case taking part, how to employ this process to understand the man with the general guideline by Dr. Samuel Hahnemann. Then we have also understood the how the medicine, the knowledge of the medicines in terms of the drug proving, and if we apply the drug proving in a proper way, and if we apply this pure symptoms into practice, then homeopathic medicines or homeopathic science become a mathematical science in certainty, what Master Hahnemann told in footnote number 106. So to continue this process again, and what Master Hahnemann telling us in the third point, that the third point of the business of the true physician is to applications of this medicinal knowledge to the patient. And when you apply this law of similia by understanding medicines and the symptom totality of the patients, then the health must ensure in a rapid, gentle, permanent way, as it is mentioned in aphorism number 2. So the third point, we are dealing with the approaches and the understanding of how the judicious way of applications of the homeopathic methodology with the wisdom of Dr. Master Samuel Hahnemann. So starting from aphorism number 146, the third point of the business of a true physician relate to the judicious employment of an artificial morbific agent, means medicines, that have been proved on a healthy individual to ascertain their pure action in order to effect the homeopathic cure of natural diseases. So this is helping us to understand that when we know the disease, when we know the medicines, and when we apply the knowledge of medicine to the diseased persons, and when we know it with the law of similia, the symptom similarity, then and then the what we called as it is called as a homeopathicity, and we must create it as a normal health restorations. Hope my voice is audible to all. You can make what we called as your setting proper so that you can hear me properly. From my side, everything is okay. Yeah, okay, fine. That's great. To continuing further in this point, what general guideline Master Hahnemann is telling us, and then what particular guideline related to the applications of this knowledge of artificial morphic agent with medicine and the approaches to the particular diseases. So continuing further in this aphorism number 147, whichever of these medicines that have been investigated as to their power of altering man's health, we find to contain in the symptoms observed from its use the greatest similarity to the totality of the symptoms of the given natural disease. This medicine will and must be the most suitable, the most certain homeopathic remedy for the disease in it is found the specific remedy of this case. So this is something you have to, if you know the medicine properly, and if you know the symptom totality of the patient, and if it is both the suitables and the similar, and when you apply this knowledge of this applications of medicinal knowledge to the patient, then it is the specific remedy for particular case of the disease. It is not what Master Hahnemann has written that the specific for the disease, specific for the case of the disease. That means we have to identify the individual, we have to identify the concept of individualism, that the case of the disease is of a pulsatile. It is not the symptoms of that disease is the pulsatilla, but it is the case of the disease is pulsatilla. So same way what Master Hahnemann has written a few line and few word in between to understand us in a proper way. Continuing further in aphorism number 148, what Master Hahnemann said about. The natural disease is never to be considered as a noxious material situated somewhere between the interior or exterior of the man. So as we know that the disease is not because of the material cause of the disease, but something that is beyond that and which we called as a concept or a conceptual or a dynamic cause or a dynamic affections which lead to the internal derangement, and it is reflected outwardly in the form of the sign and symptoms, and which we termed as a disease. The natural disease is never to be considered as noxious material situated somewhere within the interior or exterior of the man, wide aphorism number 1130, but as one produced by an inimical spirit-like conceptual agency, which, like a kind of infection, disturb in its instinctive existence of the spirit-like conceptual principle of life within the organism, torturing it as an evil spirit and compelling it to produce certain ailments and disorders in a regular course of its life. So this is something that we are understanding, that the conceptual energy or agency, which is inimical, which is acting on us, and it produce a symptoms in the disease form.
याला आपण हा कशासाठी
Please make yourself mute so we can have no disturbances. And this is known to us in the form of symptoms and which we term as a disease. Now, if the influence of this inimical agency that not only cause but strive to continue these disorders be taken away as is done when the physician administer an artificial potency, that is the medicines, capable of altering the life principle in the most similar manner. This is the law of similia, which exceed in energy. This is the modus operandi, which was written in aphorism number 26. Even in the smallest dose, that means the potency selections and the amount of the dose has to be applied the similar natural disease, then the influence of the original noxious morbid agent on the life principle is lost during the action of the stronger similar artificial disease. This is artificial disease is nothing but it is what we called as produced by the medicinal symptoms. Thence the evil no longer exists for the life principle and it is destroyed. So this is what the philosophical term told us about, that if you apply the knowledge of the disease and the knowledge of medicines by understanding that the disease is not the material cause of the disease but something because of some spirit like conceptual agency that we called as the cause. And now in the advancement of our understanding that we understood the hammer, and hammer told about that every disease starts from the psyche brain and organ relationship. So organ is the effector whereas the psyche is the causative factors of that. So when the psyche is affected and it produces a disease, so we need to understand the psyche, and when we apply this understanding in selecting the medicines, and then we apply that medicine will repel the evil, that means the disease, and disease will destroy. As has been said, if the selected homeopathic remedy is administered properly, then the acute natural disease, which is to be overruled if recently developed, that means acute disease, will disappear imperceptibly in the few hours. So what Dr. Vijayakar sir also said, what Master Haneman also said, if you apply the knowledge of the homeopathic medicines in specifically in acute disease, then the disease will disappear within few hours. And an older, more chronic disease will yield somewhat later. That means it takes little longer time together with all traces of discomfort. So that means all traces of discomfort will disappear by the use of the several doses of the same more highly potentized remedy or after a careful selection of one or another more similar homeopathic medicine. So what Master Hahnemann has given a general guideline that in a chronic case you may require several doses of the same remedy or you may require a more highly potentized remedy, or you may require a careful selection of one another. That means previously you have prescribed some remedy, then disease picture has been changed, then you have required another remedy or another more similar homeopathic medicine. So this is what the Master Hahnemann is telling us in a guideline that in a chronic condition you may require this type of treatment. Then what happened? Then health recovery follow in imperceptible, often rapid transition. So this is what Master Hahnemann is telling. Even in chronic cases, also there is a rapid transition has been happen, and then the life principle is free again and capable of resuming the life of the organism in health as before and the strength return. So this is what the homeostasis is maintained. So this is the true wisdom of Master Hahnemann that gives us the idea that how we have to apply our knowledge of medicines to the diseased persons. So continuing the understanding and the reading of the genetic Materia Medica, today we are starting with the preface so that we can understand how this Materia Medica, we all have lot of Materia Medica in our hand. There are more than 200 Materia Medica available for us. But still, why this Materia Medica is needed? So this is what Dr. Vijayakar sir tell about that what was the need of the Materia Medica of this book. So what was the need of this Materia Medica? One more Materia Medica. There are more than 200 Materia Medica books in the homeopathic world. All of them gives us the remedy picture. We all know that, but this Materia Medica is for the remedy pictures. But still, why this is needed? So there must be some reason behind that. Some gives the details and some are in the form of keynotes. Despite so much knowledge being available to us homeopaths, the results that we show are not at all encouraging. On the contrary, discouraging is also the attitude of the homeopaths because a magazine like the Lancet would just write against and also accuses this noble science of the homeopathy as being a placebo science, and none of the homeopaths in the world could do anything except write strongly worded letter of objections. This was the time to show the world that not only are we not unscientific, but the truth is that the homeopathy is the most scientific method, and the old school accuse of being otherwise is thoroughly unscientific. But this strong refuse will come if the homeopaths are themselves convinced of this being scientific science. Such a stand will come if homeopaths show to the world the fantastic cure in the illness that the world calls as incurable, or at least show the scientificness of our materia medica and the standardization in the method of practice. But we homeopaths are lacking in both. To make matter worse, most of our fellow homeopaths, not all, around the world cannot treat major diseases or a chronic incurable illnesses like a diabetes, cardiac problem, hypertension, thyroid problem, etc. Whenever any of the family member of the homeopath is declared to have a ischemia of a heart or say a threatened infarct or the threatened blindness due to the glaucoma or a retinal detachment, they run to the allopathic specialist. If someone in the family has a brain tumor, again they first run to the surgeon to get it excised. Is this not an insult to Hanuman? This great man left the old school of the allopathic thoughts in order to establish this new science, and his followers are going retrograde to the same school of thought for the health. There are teachers and the practitioners who are perhaps not aware of the gross difference between the two sciences. They are not aware that the cause of the disease should be treated and not the end product, as focused upon by other sciences. They are not aware of the removal of the tumor or a reduction of the high blood pressure is not the end of the problem, but can cause a suppression and consequently result in increase of the disease. An eminent homeopath of the Mumbai is famous for his new theories to attract the younger generation by luring people so much away from the scientific world that most of the students who follow such theories and try practicing it do not get result. Such teachers advocate from the stage that the homeopathy has its own limitations and that a homeopath should first know his limitations. So this is the things why Sir has written this book in and giving us the gift of this book for the knowledge. This teacher in the seminar of the 800 student was asked the question, if a patient is on your homeopathic treatment for a chronic disease like a hypothyroidism and is on the road to improvement, and if you develop high fever and bronchitis, what will be your course of actions? This was the question by the student. So he was given options. Will you give an acute remedy to control the fever? Second, will you retake the case and change the remedy because it is wrong? Will you keep the patient on the placebo or refer this patient to an allopath? So we have the four process. So the answer given by him was, I always refer such cases to the allopathic chest physicians, let him take antibiotic and then I will restart the treatment. What is the wrong with the allopathy? We are all brothers after all. This answer shocked me. So this shows that the lack of confidence in himself, lack of conviction in his own science, the lack of knowledge of the homeopathy, and due to this, Sir has write this book. If such an international homeopathic teacher can give such an answer, where will the confidence in the student come from? This is exactly what Hahnemann called as mongrel sect. His insufficient knowledge of homeopathy did not allow him to think that the fever or inflammation was expected when his chronic psychotic disease was regressed. This inflammatory fever, whether it was a bronchitis or a urinary tract infection, has to subside on its own. So to keep the patient on placebo was the right answer. So if we know the science in a proper way, then the answer is our handy. We need to remember that our medicines are not curing the thyroid, but the patient is curing himself. His immunity has already been stimulated, and the disease process of psychosis is taking a backseat to give way to the psoriatic inflammation. So keep your hand off the patients, but this confidence comes to the homeopath if he has a sufficient knowledge of the miasm, the real miasm of Hanuman, and the sufficient knowledge of how cure should take place in the body. So most of the practicing homeopath and the lecturers know how to prescribe, but they do not know what to observe during cure and what to expect during cure, and they end up spoiling the good result as is in this case. If such wrong directions like resorting to the allopathy for a trivial reasons are given to the student and we make our homeopath lame instead, one should increase his knowledge to such an extent and depth that one should be able to treat an emergency even like infarct with the homeopathic medicine. Nowadays, our science is so much so advanced, and we have seen many of the allopathic doctors who learn homeopathy and apply this homeopathic knowledge in their hospitals and run the hospital with the homeopathy. So this is what we have to understood. So this is the matter of confidence that Dr. Vijayakar has telling. So this Materia Medica gives the understanding that it boosts of your confidence to apply your knowledge in practice. From the above incidents, it is more than clear that the most homeopaths do not follow the law of directions of the cure, and even if they follow it, they have no idea of the embryological basis that predictive homeopathy has given to it, due to which not only a homeopath but also an allopath will have to respect. Now, the million-dollar question is why every homeopath is not seeing a cure according to the law of directions of the cure. The law of direction of the cure, for those who are not aware, was proposed by Hahnemann and laid down systematically by Dr. Constantine Hering. It is this law of direction of the cure that is the identity of the homeopathy. No other science of therapeutic or the method of treatment boasts of such a law. It was only for this reason that Dr. Hahnemann began a search for a new science. He was convinced that there has to be a particular direction in which the symptoms must disappear when the doctor is treating a patient. Just removal of the symptoms does not mean cure. The symptoms that disappears often change their locations and the manifestations, and eczema disappear on the toe only to appear on the higher places like a hand or a face. The eczema on face disappear only to appear as a cold cough. and metastasized to the asthma, the bronchitis changes, it's appear to backache, acidity may disappear to give rise to backache, the backache or any neck pain may disappear and get converted into hypertension or ischemic heart disease and finally end in a heart attack. So in the above sequences, it is observed that the disease is just shifting and that too from less important organ to the more important organ. It has gradually moved from the skin to the lung to the stomach to the heart. The doctor thinks he has cured, but the real homeopath know it is not cured but suppressed. So for that understanding, I advise all of you to read the first book of predictive homeopathy, the theory of separations in detail, so that you can apply your knowledge of embryology and understanding the patient in a follow-up, the patient is going in the right direction or the wrong direction. Hahnemann invented the new science only because he wanted not disappearance of the symptoms, but complete restoration of the health of the individual. He insisted on a reversal of the whole disease process. A real cure for him was disappearance of the heart symptoms of the high blood pressures and developing a backache, disappearance of the backache to give rise to hyperacidity or cold and cough, and disappearance of cold and cough to appear in the form of eczema on the skin, the least important organ. Thus, if the remedy is right, it should push the disease to the lesser and lesser important organ until it comes out on the skin, the exteriorization. This is what he called as cure or the reversal of the disease or a restoration of the health. Along with the physical symptoms, even the mental symptoms should improve in a particular manner. Thus, the cure is comprehensive. The law of cure states the cure should take place from above downward. We all know the Harring's law, above downward, within outward, center to periphery, from more important organ to the less important organ, and in reverse order of the appearance of the symptom. The corollary, what Dr. Vijayakar have emphasized upon, is reversal of miasm, that means from the syphilis to the psychosis to the sora, or from syphilis to the sora. That is the important in our follow-up criteria. Now, a few questions which floats in the homeopathic circles are: should the law of cure, direction of the cure, be seen in all cases? Do all homeopaths see the Harring's law? If not, why not? And if yes, why yes? So law is law, and if law is not abided by, it lead to chaos. A method of treatment without law is bound to have a flaws. So imagine a road traffic where every car driver has his own law. If there is no standard set or no rule made, some will drive the car on the right and some will on the left. Result will be chaos, accident, and confusion. So it was Dr. Hahnemann was well aware of the lawlessness of the old school of allopathy, and there was no standardization of the principle and the rules of prescribing as well as determining the cure. Therefore, when he discovered this new science of the homeopathy, rebelling against the existing science, he wrote down the principle in book he called Organon. In this Organon, he could have started with the definitions of the homeopathy, the principle on which it is based on, or something about his new invention about potentization, etc. But it was not so. He began Organon with aphorism number 1, which states, physician's high and only mission is to restore the sick to health, to cure as it is come. In his first aphorism, he has given us the reason for his new venture. The reason for inventing a new sign was that his ultimate noble aim he calls missions, and this was to restore the sick to the health. So he start off with a reason for a new discovery, and that is restore sick to the health. Here he could have written relieve the sufferings of the sick man, remove the symptoms, suppress the symptoms, or eradicate the disease, or simply he could have written cure the patient, but he preferred the word restore. From him, it was clear that the disease symptoms convert and go deeper and deeper. He wanted to reverse or and restore the person's health that he has deteriorated. Re as in reversal, retrieval, replay, rewind is generally associated with return or a playback of the certain thing. This makes Dr. Hahnemann intention clear that every disease, whether acute or a chronic, when getting cured, should show the reversal in and this directions of the disappearance of the symptoms in reverse is real cure. This clearly means that the true homeopath who is practicing right homeopathy has to see the law of cure in every case. In acute exacerbation cases, for instance, if an asthma is getting cured, he will temporarily get a dry cough followed by sneezing or a running nose and finally end up with the itching on the skin. In chronic cases, similar reversal will be seen according to the seven layer of separation of the chart. So to understand that, you need to read the seven layer of separation of chart. Why many homeopaths do not see the reversal of the symptoms? When homeopaths take into consideration only the part of the whole, and if they give importance to the wrong symptoms, the simillimum will just remove the symptoms without cure taking place. Let us now see an example of the gear system. The gear system works in such a way that each component is connected with the other. The right one, when triggered, the link up with the next in the set pattern and sets the machine to work in the required manner. So our human body is also seen working in somewhat similar fashions. The various biochemical reactions which take place in our body are interconnected, interrelated, and interdependent. The various reactions are connected at all planes, cellular level, tissue levels, the organs and the systems, and inclusive of the mental plane. The remedy must thus include the important symptoms reaction shows by an individual in various aspects. The right simillimum thus just stimulate the cure and the body acts in a similar manner as the process of gear systems and the cure is set rolling. If our remedy is a simillimum only to the mental symptoms and not the physicals and the generals, then the action is partial. For example, in a patient of ischemic heart disease, if a remedy is prescribed which covers the maximum mental symptoms, and if we match only the mental anxiety and the anxiety may then reduce, but with no reversal of atherosclerosis, this might end up in the patient's reporting I am better and later succumbing to the massive heart attack. If our remedy is simillimum only to the physical symptoms and not mentals and the generals, then the action is again only partial. For example, in patients suffering from the tuberculosis, if given a partial simillimum, it will cause the disappearance of the cough symptoms, but may lead to the schizophrenia, thus resulting in suppression, the disease progressing from body to mind. If our remedy is simillimum only to the general symptoms and not to the mentals and the physical, then the actions is again only temporary and end up in aggravations of the already existing symptoms. Thus, it is clearly visible that the law of direction of the cure is possible only when the patient is prescribed on the totality of the symptoms and not just a few sporadic ones, as the science aim to treat the patients holistically. The figure alongside clearly explains the work of the remedy as a simillimum when the prescribed on the basis of physical, mental, and the general symptoms in the totality, thus equating itself as a genetic constitutional simillimum. Look at this. If you have these are the gears of the mind, physics, generals, and everything, and we apply the remedy to everything, then it will turn the process into motions of the cure. So what does prescribing on the totality mean? So our understanding of the remedy is based on this. So Hahnemann advocates that the man in disease and not the disease in man to eradicate and cure permanently the chronic disease that have been pestering humanity from times immemorial. He was of the opinion that the old school allopathy did not consider the man as a whole and therefore failed in getting the permanent cure. It is 200 years since Dr. Hahnemann switched over from allopathy to the homeopathy. They say the science has left, has advanced and modernized, but the facts do not support the claim of the allopathic school. The asthma, the rheumatism, the hypertension, the diabetes, the thyroid, allergy, menstrual irritability, leukoderma, psoriasis, heart disease, liver cirrhosis, tumor, etc. were incurable 200 years back and still stand incurable. They are only controllable but not curable. Dr. Hahnemann found the science of homeopathy so that Such and other incurable diseases like a cancer, brain tumor, leukemias, AIDS, motor neuron disease should come under the preview of a curable disease. For this, he prescribed a new method prescribed for the man as a whole. Therefore, he is mentioned in his first aphorism, restore the sick to the health. It is something which we called as the sick means the sick man and not the sickness. To prescribe for the man, he advised to take total picture into account after a comprehensive history of the mind, body, like, dislike, tolerance, and the peculiar behavior, sensitivity, and the reactions of the patients that identify him as a unique person, which he called individualizations. Thus, homeopathy got an image of the symptoms-based mind. So what we have to consider when we are considering the individual that mind, body, like, dislike, tolerance, peculiar behavior, sensitivity, and reaction of the patient are the indicated when you are considering the individualization. Every homeopath started prescribing on a symptoms or the group of symptoms that he thought were correct. Some prescribe on the physical, some on the general, some on the particular, some on the disease and the organ, and some on the mentals. They still deteriorate as the physician started prescribing on the mental particulars like illusions, delusions, and the feeling, adding their own hypothesis. This created chaos in the homeopathic circle. This resulted into two things. First, the homeopath never saw a law of direction of the cure. Thus, this partially prescribing homeopaths were nowhere close to the complete simillimum and never spoke about his most important aspect of homeopathy. And the second, the scope and limitations remain the same as allopathy. So the cases that were not curable, the cases that were not curable by allopathy still remain incurable for the homeopaths too, and this is not the failure of homeopathy but incompetence of the homeopath. The reason is we homeopaths did not understand the man as mentioned by Dr. Hahnemann. As science advanced, we realized that the whole man, the mind, body, and all aspect of the man is the result of his genetic code. And here we would like to draw the reader's attention to fact the genetic science. That's why Sir has given the name the genetic materia medica. Has advanced to a stage beyond our imaginations. In certain part of the world, if a lady found murder after a scuffles, the debris collected from under the nails of his corpse can give so much information to the forensic expert that one or the two cells of the accused, if put under a scanner, can reveal the height, structure, look, hair textures, color of the eyes, nature, age, and much more information about the murderer. This means that the man's whole image can be reconstructed by reading the genetic code. Vice versa, this also means that the genetic code is responsible for the individualizations of the person. Thus, we conclude that it is the genes that make a man. So our understanding is genetics and Hahnemann. So why? What Hahnemann has also given the idea about the genetics. So those the genes and the genetic code being responsible for the inheritance of the character was discovered much later. Hahnemann was already talking about it 200 years back. Let us see some aphorism where he has indirectly given reference to the genetics. In aphorism number 81, the fact that this extremely ancient infecting agent has gradually passed in some hundreds of generations through many millions of the human organism and has thus attained an incredible development render it in some measure conceivable how it can now display such innumerable morbid form in a great family of mankind, particularly when we consider what number of circumstances contribute to the production of that this great variety of the chronic disease, the secondary symptoms of the sura, beside the indescribable diversity of the man in respect of their congenital corporeal constitution. So that it is no wonder if such variety of injurious agency acting from within and from without, and sometimes continually on such a variety of organisms permeated with the phoric miasm, should produce an innumerable variety of the defect, injury, derangement, and the suffering which have hitherto been treated of in the old pathological work under the number of the special name as disease of an independent character. So here it was truly mentioned that the ancient agent gradually passed some hundreds of generations through many millions of the human organism. So this is what the indirect understanding that this is something that Master Hahnemann is telling about the genetics. Here we see Hahnemann talking about the inheritance of the symptoms and even mutation that gives rise to the different dangerous diseases. He also mentions the effect of the genes on the corporeal constitutions. Again, in aphorism number 5 says the useful to the physician in assisting him to cure of the particular of the most probable exciting cause of the acute disease, as also the most significant point in the whole history of the chronic disease to enable him to discover its fundamental cause, which is generally due to chronic miasm. In this investigation, the ascertainable physical constitutions of the patient, especially when the disease is chronic, his moral, intellectual character, his occupation, mode of living, habits, his social domestic relations, his age, sexual function, etc., are to be taken into consideration. So again, he already advised aphorism 1 that in order to effect a cure, one should try to restore the sick man to the health. What include a sick man is given in aphorism number why. He could fathom that man's individuality was due to something inside that gives rise to his physical makeup, like likes, dislikes, habits, mental makeup, which include will, intellect, functions, moral and conscience, his behavior that goes along a long way in the keeping relationship with sexual function, etc. Besides this, one need to consider for prescribing the exciting cause in acute disease and the fundamental cause in the chronic disease. In short, one need to consider the physical makeup, the mental makeup, the general makeup, and the disease makeup. All these factors we know now are due to the genetic code. For understanding the disease makeup, what aphorism number 189 says that, and yet very little reflection will suffice to convince us that no external malady, that means no external disease, not occasioned by some important injury from without, can arise, persist, or even grow worse without some internal cause, without the cooperations of the whole organism, which must consequently be in the disease state. So this cooperation, that means which is all the genes are stimulated, and without stimulations of the disease will not arise. It could not make its appearance at all without the consent of the whole of the rest of the health and without the participation of the rest of the whole of the vital force that pervade all the other sensitive and irritable part of the organism. In Indeed, it is impossible to conceive its productions without the instrumentality of the whole deranged life so intimately are all part of the organism connected together to form an indivisible whole in sensations and functions. So indivisible whole, it is called as individual. No eruptions on the leaf, no whitlow can occur without the previous and simultaneous internal ill health. So this is what Hassan Hahnemann telling about in disease part. Also, genetic plays a very important role. Without the cooperations of the genes, it cannot be possible. Here he mentions that nothing in this body or a mind occur without the cooperation of the whole organism, and nothing can appear in the body and make its appearance at all without the consent of the whole of the rest and without the participation of the rest of the whole. Force that pervade all the other sensitive and irritable part of the organism. Here he mentions about something that is responsible for everything in this body. This cannot be the nerve, nor could it be the blood, because there is a part in our 75 trillion cells called body occur in the organism. This cannot be the nerves or nor could it be the blood because there is a parts in our 75 trillion cells body where this do not reach. Thus, genes inside the cells are the only factor that connect the body completely and are responsible for every little thing that occurs in the organism. On the disease front, Dr. Hahnemann classified all the illness and the disease into three categories: with psora, psychosis, and the syphilis. It also mentioned in aphorism number 74, he says that whenever a cell is injured, it revolts. During this revolt, it gives rise to three manifestations in the form of inflammations and the hypersensitivity, induration, dilatation, relaxation, and contraction, and the destructions of the internal or the external parts to save the whole. These are the three processes of the defense mechanism that are at work to save the whole body. This teaching of Hahnemann was confirmed by the scientists who have finally found the origin of all the disease process in the defense mechanism of the cell. Again, in aphorism number 205 states that homeopathic physicians never treat one of these primary symptoms of the chronic miasm, nor yet one of their secondary affections that result from their further development by local remedies, but he cures only the great miasm on which they depend, whereupon its primary as also its secondary symptom disappear spontaneously. So after having identified the genetic process as the cause of any disease, Hahnemann went further to advise that in order to complete a cure, patient we need to identify and treat the process at the genetic level, which he called the miasm. The main of the homeopath is to treat the genetic process, that means the miasm and not the disease. This process of Sora, the physiological defense, the psychosis, the fortification defense, and the syphilis, the destructive defense, are the genetic in origin and will be reflected in everything that arising from the genes. Thus, we have a soric mind, the soric body, and the soric disease, psychotic mind, psychotic body structure, and the psychotic disease, and the syphilitic mind, syphilitic body structure, and the syphilitic disease. So, every right homeopath has to therefore understand what is the influence of all this miasm on the mind, body, disease, like, dislike, reaction, and sensitivity. For more understanding, Dr. Vijayakar sir advised that you have to read the book End of My Assumptions of Miasm. A reference chart printed in on the inner side of the front cover will guide the reader to effect the three miasm on the physical mental plane. So we have to understand the process, the genetic process happening at the level of cellular mechanism in the form of a miasm. So miasmatic reflections, the effect of the miasm or the physiological defense processes on the tissue. The sora is seen at the physical level as the irritation, inflammation, pain, spasm, constriction, sensitiveness. Psychosis is seen as the hyper or hypo in terms of accumulation, synthesis, deposition, and proliferation. And syphilis is seen at the physical level as exaggeration, distortion, perversion, hysterical, or out of control destructions, autoimmune, and the genetic mutations. So, effect of the miasm or the physiological defense process on the mind. The soric mind is depicted as the anxious, nervous, apprehensive, irritable, angry, sensitive, and insecure. The psychotic mind depicted more about hyper and hypo. So hyper is the fearfulness, the vivaciousness, the showmanship, boasting, rigidity, hardness, intelligence, justing, precocity, ideas, abundance of ideas, and the collections of many things. And hypo lead to relaxed looseness in the character and the principle, the frivolous, the yielding, introvertedness, bashfulness, and embarrassment. And the syphilis mind is depicted as hysterical, distorted, perverted destructions of a control, like a panic attack, fearlessness, insanity, dementia, love for own sex, or with animal illusions and delusion, etc. The destruction of senses gives rise to painlessness, no complaint, no odor, no sight, no hearing, and no taste, etc. So this is what we have mentioned in this book as a miasmatic reflections in the mind and body. So we have to understand the remedy, how the remedy reflect in the miasmatic body reflections in Sora, how in psychosis, and how in syphilis. Now, the miasmatic journey, when any tissue is injured, it inflames first. The inflammation is known to be a mechanism for the defense and the repair. If the attacking injurious agent is not taken care of, inflammation turn into indurations. If then also the cause is not taken care of, the body resort to the third or the respective response to save the whole. Thus, a tumor or an ulcer as a result of this process at the genetic level. There was an so this was the case by Sir. There was an 18-month-old child who landed up in the hospital with the suspected pneumonia and the right lung collapse and was on ventilator, and doctor had given no hope. The parents were homeopaths, and hence they took a decision to give her homeopathy after a short history of bronchitis and the high fever treated both with the allopathic and homeopathy. It had all started with the nasal cold, followed by the chest condition, later followed by the dysentery that had a characteristic dark green color stool. Within space of only 6 to 7 days, the child progressed from cold, sore to the lung collapse. It means the respiratory center shut down, the syphilis. The child was chilly. It was basically an angry child who became very cranky and restless when cold and cough was going on. During her stay in the hospital, she stopped crying and complaining in spite of her condition worsening. She was perspiring a lot with the bluish discoloration. The journey from sore to syphilis right up to the affections of the respiratory center in the medulla had taken only 6 days indicated that this remedy has to be a very fast speed remedy and this remedy had to be very severely destructive. So we need a remedy that was syphilitic. We need a remedy that was genetically prone to or had tendency to be a very fast in the speed. We need a remedy have a right-sided affections, which is lungs is affected, and we need a remedy that tendency to the dark green stool when in the psychosis, and the remedy that can have a respiratory center collapse. That means we need to understand that, and we need a remedy having a bluish discoloration of the hand and brownish hue on the face. So this is what by looking into symptom we have to understand the miasmatic process. So above all, how she had fought these infections was more important to be analyzed. In psoriatic state, she had a lung infection. In psychosis, she had green stool. In syphilis, she had a respiratory center collapse. In psoriatic mind, was very anxious, irritable, cranky. In psychosis, she was angry and obstinate. In syphilis, she was not complaining anything or not bother about his recovery. So indifference to her sufferings and her recovery. The syphilitic symptoms of the respirations arrested plus psychotic symptoms of the dark green stool gave us a single common remedy, which was arsenic alb. Indifference to recovery, be fast in the speed, having right-sided affections, tendency to dark green stool when in psychosis, and the remedy that can have a respiratory center collapse is all covered by the remedy arsenic alb. The single dose of this remedy saved this child from the jaw of death. The improvement started within 20 minutes as the father reported changes in the color of the face to the redness from the brownish coloration, followed by the hand getting normal oxygenation supply, showing that the respiratory center, which was most important organ, had started functioning. The recovery thus showed improvement from the most important organ first and from the face to the hand, showing the ideal having flow of cure in the progress. The above changes taken into account on in pathology depict the affinity of the remedy as well as the defense process at the genetic level. This change, for example, from inflammation to the destruction will be seen in the constitutions only if the genes of that constitution has predominance of the syphilitic miasm. Similarly, predominantly psychotic constitutional will show changes of the mind as well as the body symptoms highlighting the psychotic miasm. So this is very important to understand the miasm. So in aphorism number 190, all the true medical treatment of the disease on the external part of the body that has occurred from the little or no injury from without must therefore be directed against the whole, must effect an annihilation and the cure of the general malady by means of internal remedy. If it is wished that the treatment should be judicious, sure, efficacious, and radical. So internal medication is needed. Aphorism number 192 shows that thus the ideal cure is the best effected when in the investigations of the case of the disease along with the exact character of the local affections, all the changes, suffering and the symptoms observable in the patient's health and which may have been previously noticed when no medicine has been used are taken in conjunctions to form a complete picture of the disease before searching amongst the medicines whose peculiar pathogenetic effects are known for a remedy corresponding to the totality of the symptoms so that the selection may be truly homeopathic. So this is what Master Hahnemann is telling, that you do have to consideration that the genetic pathogenesis of medicines has to be applied into genetic pathogenesis of the individual is suffering from. For that, we have to understand this materia medica. So, every remedy is tri-miasmatic as per understanding of Dr. Vijayakar sir. So, we should include in our study of materia medica. So what should we include in our study of materia medica? We have to include the process of understanding in our material. So every remedy, though born with any one predominant miasm, has a three defense like a sora, psychosis, and the syphilis. Every constitution or a remedy is born with the basic defect or the conflict. For example, the baraita is born with the defective growth tendency resulting in defective intellect and every aspect of the mind reflecting misplaced attitudes and the tendency. For example, Calcarea born with the fragile without power to protect itself, therefore spend whole of life fighting to protect or finding a protector. This is true of every group and every remedy. Thus, study of materia medica does not mean just knowing one picture of that drug. So Ignatia is always given by all Materia Medica book as a hysterical, changeable, emotional personality affected easily by grief and indignations and anger. But this is only syphilitic defense of the Ignatia. Do not forget this Ignatia was once so rich, especially in the childhood. None of the Materia Medica book gives us that picture nor about the psychotic Ignatia. This means the homeopath will use it only when they find syphilitic symptoms. In fact, Chili, thustless, timid young girl who is conscientious about trifle, very studious, very diligent, and who is affected badly or falls ill when she loses her first rank in the class is a classical example of the soric ignatia that many do not know. Such prescriptions that covers the understanding of all three miasm can help regenerate, destroy tissue is in the bone destructions of the avascular necrosis or regenerations of the destroyed lung tissue or in the interstitial lung disease or a regeneration of the connective tissue in autoimmune diseases like scleroderma or make a tumor disappear. Such type of triamiasmatic prescriptions are required not in ordinary cases but in impossible sounding cases. In fact, if stem cell is to be stimulated, the syphilitic plus psychotic plus the soric picture is to be haunted for and prescribed, then and only then we homeopath can show the fantastic cure. So this is what Dr. Prafull Vijayakar wanted from us, and we have to apply this knowledge in our practice. So this end of the preface, and from tomorrow morning we continue about how this book is working and the one group symptoms started from the baraita, so understanding of the genetics and then baraita. Okay, so thank you so much. Hope you all have a certain idea how this book has been prepared and how this help in your practice. So this is what we are reading and we are making aware that help you in your practice. What pathological rubric be considered for avascular necrosis? First and foremost thing you have to understand that in avascular necrosis, what was the things has to be happen in the case. So in that case, the rich supply of the blood vessels is in the head of the femur. It's a bone. Yes, mostly it happened after the post-steroid or mostly happen after the immunosuppressive drugs. So the symptom most of time post-steroid, I had I had heard about that Dr. Vijayakar sir has told that whenever you find that anything after the abuse of allopathic medicament and so that you apply one of the remedy, that is a nux vomica, in this pathological case also. So nux vomica is one of the best remedy in avascular necrosis. The rubric you have to take is the blood vessel complaint general, because in this avascular necrosis, the blood vessels are destroyed, the capillaries are destroyed, and the resultant effect is the necrosis of the bone. So you can combine two rubric, that blood vessel complaint generals and the necrosis of the bones, and then you apply the cause, that abuse of allopathic medicament. Then we prescribe the nux vomica. So nux vomica is one of the best. I had few cases of AVN, and many cases yield to 2 3 remedy. That is, one is lachesis, one is nux vomica, and I had one case which is improving with the nitric acid based on his dispositions and everything. So this is what I generally took two rubrics, that is blood vessel complaints general, because the capillary has been destroyed and the resultant effect is necrosis of the bone. So carries necrosis of the bone to both two rubric has to be taken into this case, and then apply the causative factor in the case, and then you apply the remedy. So your remedy will take care 200 potency, and you may not require a repetition, or you may require a infrequent repetitions, and that means a less repetitions in your case. Follow up after 3 to 6 months, so you will get significant changes in the scan also. So hope you have. Yes. Cause for AVN as a mind of pathology, there are a different. Most of time, the AVN, recent AVN is because of the medicament, but the heap represent that there is a burden, and if with the burden associated with the loved one, and on the basis of that, it is affected. So I must say, one of the case, the history like that, the persons having the left-sided AVN, and left-sided, we know that it is associated with either a home or a children's, and the process that it is associated with the blood vessels. So I do not want to give a nutrition to my loved ones. So that is what something you have to think of. So most of the angry remedy comes into this kind of personality, because they can produce a destructions. Most of the esteem remedy goes into this, because they goes into destructions of the bone. So you can look like this. So one of the person having the situations that he came to know that her daughter got selected one person for her marriage, and she was committed to marry with that, but due to some social context and social differences of the caste, he is not agree to have marriage. But the scenario is like that, he has to bend against her daughter's wish, and then he developed this kind of personality, this kind of AVN. So this is what I don't want to give nutrition to my daughter, and he was very very angry. So this is something you have to and cannot forget things what has happened. So in that case, the things we have to understand, that hatred who offended, or sometime you have that cannot apologize. So nitric acid was the 200 potency single dose, no repetition is required. Or after a 3 4 months or 6 months, you will find that there is a change in the gait and everything. So you can get the MRI done, and you will get the changes in the MRI. Follow up after 6 months. MRI you can go for after 6 months. So you will get the changes. So thank you so much. Thank you all. Hope you all enjoy, and great learning. Thank you all. We will continue this. Thank you. Thank you so much.